5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0, ignition, liftoff.
You're listening to Relentless. This is the show for high performers who are driven and committed to being at their best. Nick Peterson and Jonathan Montgomery, co-founders of Relentless Dietetics, are your hosts.
Welcome to the Relentless Podcast. I'm Nick Peterson, hanging out today with Jonathan Montgomery.
What is up?
And the Dr. Trevor Cashy.
Hello!
Every time. I love it. And as per usual,
best.
We're here to discuss getting better every day. The last few episodes, we really jammed on practical application, just mastering skills to the point where you could apply them to your life. And like anything else, this is only as useful as the actions you actually take. So what we're going to do today, I think, is we're just going to kind of jam on some mistakes, some misunderstandings, and things to watch out for. And we'll skim over them real quick. But what we want is for our listeners, for all of you guys, to let us know which topics you would like us to expand upon. What makes sense to you? What doesn't make sense to you? How can we give you the tools to apply this better to your life? And then once we get that feedback, we can record more podcasts or go live in Facebook groups, record webinars, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, we're definitely just going to begin to scratch the surface here on some of these things in terms of the concepts and how you can practically apply them. So if anything resonates, like Nick said, just reach out and let us know so we can prioritize their delivery and get them out to you. Like we always talk about better every day, it's often helped by kind of the right sequence and order of operations. And for you, one of these things may be more applicable to you right now. So let us know and we'll jam on it with you.
I'm just going to go through points. We'll kind of talk about big picture, what it means. Okay, there's probably 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6 that we'll touch on today. The first one being what I always refer to as brackets. And Trevor, you always tell people it's like putting bumpers up in the bowling alley, right?
In the context of RD, it's really like Jonathan likes to say, keep the main thing the main thing. I know lots of people like to say that, but I hear him say it the most. It's kind of set the fence, and then you can kind of wander in it how you'd like. And as long as you stay in the fence, you know you're heading the right direction.
Yep. At our last retreat, we had somebody, and she's going to know I'm talking about it when she hears this, say, I would do anything to lose this weight. She's not being realistic about her own brackets, her own bumpers, right? Because you won't do anything. You will do anything as long as you can go to work and maybe have a glass of wine at night and spend time with the kids. So setting up these brackets or these bumpers is probably the number one thing people completely miss when they have, whatever goal they have.
This is exactly what I like to call the intention intervention gap. And that a lot of people confuse intentions with actions. And again, what RD's job is in the context of working with people is that you have intentions, right? You may intend to do anything possible to get what you want, but for whatever reason, nothing actually happens. And so the bumpers are set up to bridge the gap between intentions and intervention.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what we found is ultimately for most people, quality of life is everything. Just because you could do something, whether it's achieving something or accomplishing something, it doesn't mean that you should when all things are factored in. For some people, really, this truly may mean extreme measures to garner extreme results, but you have to ask yourself, is that you? That's something you have to dig deep on. Do you really want the goal, or do you simply think it sounds like a good idea and you just want it, but you're not really willing to do what it takes to get it?
Yeah, brackets. You'll hear me say brackets a lot. You hear bumpers. But that's what we mean when we say that. It's just understanding, what do you actually want? You want this while maintaining these other lifestyle factors. The second one is not knowing what you actually know and what you don't know. There's a few layers of this. Sometimes there's maybe recognizing when people with more credentials are impaired by a cognitive bias or some other obvious force. A good example is I will never, ever claim to be smarter than Trevor. I will, and I'm sure he would tell you, I will challenge him if I think he's being impaired by cognitive bias of some sort. And you also have to recognize when maybe you don't have anything to add, and you should just kind of shut your mouth and listen to the people in the room.
I totally agree that an expert in one subject is a layperson in all others. And that I like to pull this out of my pocket once in a while because it goes right along with what you just said. If you got a toothache and you go to the chiropractor, guess what? You're getting your back cracked.
Every time. I think one of the greatest answers anyone can give me, and it kind of goes along with what you're saying, is recognizing when you have nothing to add is, one of the best answers and one that immediately establishes trust is I don't know, but, I could try to help you find out. If you go to the chiro and you have a toothache and instead of trying to crack your back, he refers you to his dentist, I'd probably trust that guy if my back hurt. So kind of owning what you don't know, accepting it and admitting it is an extremely powerful thing. And it kind of shows a much greater sense of self-awareness and actual knowledge and pretending just to know everything.
I was telling Jonathan about this the other day, about the bees. Bees have jobs, and you have a scout bee that goes out and finds honey and comes back and then does a dance. And that dance signals to the other bees where the honey is so everybody can eat. And somebody did an experiment and put the honey directly above the bee. And the bee doesn't have any way to indicate straight up. It just doesn't exist in nature. And what Charlie Munger says, who's a great thinker, when people are not aware of what they know and what they don't know, they're kind of like this incoherent, drunken bee that is doing this dance, trying to explain something they cannot possibly explain. Because in nature, there's no way to say, hey, the honey's straight up. So that's why I always think about this like incoherent drunken bee trying to do a dance to explain something they just don't have the tools to explain.
We kind of always tell people that you don't know what you don't know until you know that you don't know it. And it sounds kind of simple once you actually know things. When you're an informed consumer, everything makes sense and those aha moments happen regularly. But that's only because somebody's flipped the lights on for you. And it kind of brings me back to like kind of your first point, on recognizing if you are impaired by a cognitive biases. How do you know what you know and how are you sure? And, this is kind of one of those concepts to me that requires some additional awareness and information, is what's presumed right today could be found wrong tomorrow. And, when you're trusting people, you're looking for sources, you're looking at yourself, you got to make sure, are you critical of your information? Are you testing the validity of it? Do you try and poke holes in it? And one of my coaches, hi, Jacob, how you doing? Recently kind of explained in a video post that his interest and passion for philosophy started with epistemology, which is basically this branch of philosophy dedicated to the theory of knowledge and the difference between whether a belief is justified or whether it's an opinion. And his entire reasoning for it was to actually be able to know why he knew things. How to reason through beliefs in regards to separating fact from fiction, how to deliver a better product and result for his clients. And to me, that stood out as somebody to trust, somebody who enters an entirely separate field from their chosen discipline to find out how they know things in their chosen discipline. I mean, that's just somebody that's always kind of looking to know why they know. And to me, that's the kind of the people you want to search out for. And that's kind of the person you want to strive to be.
If you're ready to get the body you desire without depriving yourself of the foods you enjoy, download your free diet playbook now at www.relentlesspodcast.com.
Third mistake here. We talk about this a lot. We have a podcast about guilt and shame. Judging and moralizing, especially food, we talk about in the context of food and fitness a lot. Having this hypothetical, operating from this hypothetical opinion about the way things should be and judging everything else as good or bad or whatever, operating in that black and white and just not understanding that things are what they are.
These labels, this good, bad, this right and wrong, or no pain, no gain. I mean, there's literally entire subcultures and countless industries predicated on this notion of attaching morality to situations and objects where really there's no need for it. And then subsequently telling everyone that the way to enlightenment can only be found through finding how much you can suffer or how much you can endure. And it's kind of ridiculous, and Nick, as you just pointed out, rarely ever is the answer black and white. most often or not, the answer for you is found in those shades of gray, and as we talked about in the podcast with food, especially, it's not good. It's not bad. It just is. There's no morality involved in it. Once you realize it and realize that you're in control of what goes in your mouth, then you're free to make those choices that make you feel good, that make you feel bad, bring you closer to your goals or push you further away, but at the end of the day, you got to realize that choice is yours, and it's not something you need to be guilted or shamed into doing. It's just something you need to accept the outcome of.
I think it's worth bringing up too that this ties in pretty well to the podcast that we did on the growth versus fixed mindset, and how this also ties into one of the first points that was brought up in this here episode that had to do with, are you sure you know? Do you know you don't know if you know, or whatever the combination of words is that essentially the vilification or the lauding of something in particular, if you don't know it for sure, a lot of decisions are automatically made based off of cultural bias, which might be different than a cognitive bias. And that is because if you don't know something for sure, well, essentially everybody thinks this way, and therefore this is a quick and easy way to make a decision without having to deep dive into whether or not it makes sense. So that's just something to keep in mind, that the morality applied to food is kind of a cultural concept, and since it is so pervasive, it is easy to make your decisions based off of that paradigm and really save yourself from cognitive load, but it might be pointing you in the wrong direction in the long term.
I think anything, if you operate from that hypothetical, whether, it's cultural and this is the way things should be, you're in for a world of trouble. I know as a scientist, Trevor has told me that, like, in science, in the lab, would you say, like, things never actually work out the way you think they will when you go into it?
Yeah, you get pretty cynical. And the funny thing is that in science, you have to assume two contradicting things at once. Number one, that I'm operating under a set of rules that are absolutely true. And number two, I'm operating under the presumption that everything is also bullshit. And so long as you think in those two frames of mind at once, you'll end up surviving.
That's a dichotomy right there.
Yes. So you have a paradigm that you function under, but the whole purpose of you being involved is to force a shift in the paradigm to begin with. So you're working under a set of rules, assuming they are true for the sole purpose of disrupting the rules that are in place. It's kind of deep, but I guess that's pretty much in the context of science, that's what it is. But when you think of these biases, I kind of think in similar terms too. There's a reason that things are looked at in a certain way. But if you're looking to push the envelope, you have to kind of act within the boundaries and figure out what the rules are so you can simultaneously figure out ways to circumvent them.
Yep. If you don't challenge the way things are, right, at this position, then you're probably going to get about what everybody else gets. Last point here that I want to touch on, because it is one of the biggest paradigm shifts. We have a phenomenal video. Trevor has a great video about this. And it's called What Drives You. And it is the mindset. It's the difference between being there already and enjoying the process of getting there. And Trevor, in the video, you use goal-oriented versus process-oriented. And that's something that I kind of wanted to leave some time for you guys to expand upon, because it's such a huge paradigm shift. If there's anything you want to do long-term, make permanent changes, that kind of thing.
Yeah, on the practical side of things, the results are almost always the same if a person follows through. The difference is really the amount of mental energy, anxiety, obsession, and stress you put into whatever you are doing to get to where you want to be. And I think somewhere in that video, I mentioned the concept of kind of letting the finish line come to you. And there are habits and rituals and thought processes and all sorts of other things you can have in place that you do automatically so that you get the results you want without having to obsess over it. And that in turn makes it so, depending on how you look at it, the finish line end up coming to you instead of you being tunnel vision to get to the end.
We'll get that video up. Jonathan, can we get that on relentlesspodcast.com/process?
Yeah, we can absolutely throw that up there, man. It really is a great video. And it absolutely, distills everything down when it comes to goals and process. But for me, I think this comes down to a few things. And one, we've talked about it before, it's controlling what you control or you can control. And two is if the goal itself matters most, or is it the perception or delusion in some cases of what achieving it will do for you? How much it will change your life, what opportunities will arise from it, or actually what you are, supposed to achieve after the goal is hit. On the first hand, as Dr. Cash pointed out, it comes down to outcomes versus behaviors. You can't necessarily control an outcome, but you can control your behavior. So whining incessantly about the things outside of your control while ignoring the things within it seem futile and juvenile to me. As he pointed out, most people find that by controlling their behaviors and following through and ensuring that their actions are in line and structured to help them improve, the process, as opposed to the outcome, your goals actually happen without much thought needed, and that finish line does kind of come to you. When it comes to point two for me, is the goal that matters most. I really think I've heard T reference it before, but I think Tim Ferriss has nailed it here with, do you want $1 million or do you want the lifestyles you feel it will provide? 7 zeros in the bank won't do much for you on its own. For many people, the lifestyle and the freedom they truly desire from that, achieving that goal, can actually be had for a lot less. So do you want to lose the 5, 10, 15 pounds, or do you want to feel good about yourself? One doesn't always lead to the other. So, if you understand that the process of feeling good, the process of doing things to make you happy, is actually what you're after, the goal of whatever it is, weight, money, eternal bliss will tend to come along with it. And I think that's one of the things that gets captured in that video really well.
Yeah, that video is one of my favorite to share. Like I said, the paradigm shift is it's profound. We could unpack a lot here. I implore the listeners, you guys, to let us know. Facebook, you can comment, you can leave a review on the podcast and let us know what can we expand upon that would be valuable to you. And just to recap, we have brackets, bumpers, understanding what is actually important to you, setting up the appropriate fence to wander within, knowing what you know and what you don't know, and recognizing when maybe an expert is not the appropriate expert. Judging, moralizing, and working from this hypothetical opinion that you have, maybe challenging your opinion, and focusing on the process versus the goals. If you give us feedback, we can hit some video, we can hit some audio, we can really expand upon this to give you whatever you may need to actuate this and make it happen for yourself.
Yeah, I think that's all we got for today. So thanks for listening. And as we pointed out, guys, just let us know what you want us to talk about, or else you're going to be stuck with listening to what we want to talk about. And we're okay with it either way. So pick your poison. Thanks for listening. See you next week.
You've been listening to the Relentless Podcast. Now, if you've enjoyed this episode and you want to keep getting a little bit better every day, do us a favor, head over to iTunes, subscribe, leave us an honest review, and be sure not to miss the next one.
This is thepodcastfactory.com.